What if success wasn't really about luck or some kind of innate talent, but actually a specific, trainable skill? Well, today, we're going to dive into the powerful brain patterns that highly successful people use, not because they were born with them, but because they learned them. So let's just start with the big question, right? What really makes someone successful? Is it just raw talent, knowing the right people, or is it simply being in the right place at the right time? We're always told it's about talent, luck, and opportunity. And hey, don't get me wrong, they can definitely play a part. But the real engine driving success, the thing underneath it all, is something way more fundamental, a specific pattern of thinking. And this right here, this gets to the absolute heart of it. The key word, the one I want you to focus on, is trained. Success isn't about having some special, different brain. It's about training the brain you already have to operate more effectively. So how in the world do they do it? Let's dive into the first pillar. Okay, pillar number 1 is all about emotional discipline. Now this is the bedrock. It's the foundation that everything else, all the clear thinking and intentional action, is built on. So what is it, really? Think of it like this. It's that crucial little bit of space you can create between feeling something, anger, fear, frustration, and immediately reacting to it. It's not about not feeling things, it's about not letting those feelings drive the car. And just look at the difference one small action makes. The untrained brain, it reacts instantly. It panics, it gets defensive. But the trained brain, it introduces a crucial pause. It doesn't ignore the emotion, it just feels it without letting that initial impulse take over. That tiny gap, that's where all the good stuff happens. That's where clarity and better decisions are born. Now, here's another critical part of emotional discipline: separating who you are from what you do. For the untrained brain, a project that bombs means I am a failure. Your identity gets wrapped up in the outcome. But the trained brain sees it totally differently. The outcome was a failure. This simple shift in language is a legitimate superpower. It protects your confidence and gives you the resilience to take risks, knowing that one result doesn't define your entire being. And finally, this all ties into ownership. The untrained mind, it often looks outward. It blames external stuff for how it feels on the inside. But the trained mind, it takes responsibility for its own inner state. Now, this isn't about blaming yourself, it's about reclaiming your power and creating your own emotional independence. So, once you've built that foundation of emotional discipline, where do you point all that clear-headed energy? Well, that brings us right to our second pillar, strategic action. Strategic action is really the skill of intentionally filtering out all the noise. The distractions, the drama, the 1,000 little things that don't matter, so you can focus your precious mental energy only on what's actually going to move the needle on your long-term goals. This is where future-oriented thinking really comes into play. See, an untrained brain gets stuck. It gets trapped by the discomfort of right now, the hard work, the uncertainty. A trained brain, though, it can tolerate that discomfort because it's always connecting today's grind with tomorrow's reward. It's playing the long game. It's also about where you put your focus. Instead of fixating on the problem and just stewing in the pain of it all, the trained mind acknowledges it, and then, boom, immediately pivots its energy toward finding solutions, and most importantly, taking action. And I absolutely love this quote because it just flips a common myth completely on its head. We often think we need to have perfect clarity before we can do anything. But the truth is, it's usually the other way around. It's the very act of moving forward, of just trying something, that builds the clarity we were looking for all along. And finally, strategic action requires selective focus. You can think of an untrained mind like an open fire hydrant, just spraying mental energy everywhere. A trained mind, on the other hand, understands that focus is a finite, precious resource. It actively filters out all the noise to protect it. All right, this brings us to our third and final pillar, which honestly might be the most transformative of them all: resilient learning. This is about completely changing your relationship with failure. At its core, resilient learning is a massive mindset shift. It's the practice of seeing every single outcome not as good or bad, but simply as information. A setback isn't a final verdict on your worth, it's just data for your next attempt. So here's how that actually plays out. A setback happens. The untrained brain immediately makes it personal. It asks, what does this say about me? But the trained brain works with a learning bias. It asks a much more powerful question. Okay, what can I learn from this? That single shift in perspective changes absolutely everything. And when you adopt that learning bias, failure is no longer some kind of threat to your ego or your identity. It becomes simple, neutral information. It's the key that unlocks the door to whatever's next.
And here's the practical result of that. The untrained mind gets stuck in that loop of rumination, right? Replaying mistakes over and over, which is just a massive waste of energy. The trained mind, however, practices recovery. It reflects just long enough to grab the lesson, and then it channels all its energy into moving forward.
Okay, so we've covered emotional discipline, strategic action, and resilient learning. So what does all this mean for you? It means your brain, and by extension your success, is in your hands. It's a matter of design, not destiny. So how do you actually train these patterns? Look, it isn't some secret trick or a magic bullet. It's through consistent work. It's about building small habits that reinforce these mindsets. It's taking time to reflect on your reactions instead of just being a slave to them. It's choosing action, even small action, over sitting still. And maybe most of all, it's having patience with yourself as you build these new mental muscles. I think this is probably the most powerful takeaway from this whole explainer. The ultimate goal isn't really to chase some external, totally different life. It's to fundamentally change the internal relationship you have with your own mind. That's where the real transformation happens.
So, as we wrap up, the real question isn't whether you can train your brain, because you absolutely can. The question is, which one of these powerful patterns are you going to start with? Emotional discipline, strategic action, or resilient learning? The choice is yours. Thanks for tuning in.